So, everybody, you were going to try and do an impression again, just like you started the previous episode.
Yeah, but Marlon Brando's not in this movie, so
No.
didn't seem fitting.
No, but we are going to talk about a little something with Marlon Brando for this movie.
Ah.
So, there's your tease. Today, we are talking about The Godfather Part 2. Now, what is really kind of pivotal to us talking about this movie and this franchise is, of course, you probably know, maybe you're a new listener, maybe you don't, that this is the Macabre Podcast universe, and we exist to prove people wrong when they say
sequels are never better than the originals.
And this is often cited, this and I would say Empire Strikes Back, as two examples of movies that are better than the originals. So this has been kind of like...
better than the first entry.
Yes. So this is kind of a big moment for the podcast because this one is one where like most people agree.
I think Two Towers falls under that camp as well.
I think Two Towers is not quite as good as Fellowship.
But I think that's the one that most people have seen.
Sure.
Specifically because of Helm's Deep.
Yes. I just don't know if that's like if everyone would say that. Whereas the Star Wars and Godfather, but you think everyone would say that Two Towers is better.
I just feel like that has been my experience in my personal life in talking to people about it.
You might be, maybe it's just because like history hasn't, like those movies, they're old, but they're not like old. Who knows what people say in like another 10 years about them. Although I think most people agree that like Return of the King is the best.
Yeah.
But we've already talked about that. Go back and listen to those episodes. We're talking about The Godfather Part 2. Okay? Jordan, when did you first see this movie?
I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that I've seen this movie before. But it did feel like watching it for the first time. But there were parts where it just felt familiar. Therefore, I don't know. So basically, last night was my first time.
I feel about the same way as you when I was watching it, where I was like, this seems vaguely familiar. This scene does too, but nothing where I'm like, I know what's about to happen.
Definitely, yeah.
But as I talked about on the previous episode, I watched Godfather 2 on a portable DVD player during lunch breaks when I was at a worship conference.
That is
playing guitar and
psychotic.
stuff.
That is the most ridiculous thing.
Don't be mad at me.
That just doesn't even make sense.
Well, it was lunch breaks, and they were hour-long lunch breaks.
Socialize or something.
Well, these are like, it's people...
No, you don't have to socialize, but you chose to watch this on a portable DVD player?
And Casablanca.
That is crazy to me.
So I watched this, and I remember that feeling where I was like, oh, this is so good. And then it gets to when Robert De Niro is Vito Corleone, and he gets with his family, and then it goes to black, and then it says insert disc 2 or flip over disc, and I was like, oh my gosh, how long is this movie? But I remember really liking it. And then of course here we are, and we watched it again. This was only my second time watching Godfather Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
And should we give some of our knee-jerk reactions to it before we jump in?
It's really good.
It's great.
Period. I enjoy the first one more, but this one's really good.
It's just so lush.
It's just like, I just don't think it always works when you want to do a flashback on a character.
Yeah.
I think it can easily become overindulgent.
Yeah.
And this does not. It's like they had something to say. About it. So that's why I think it worked. And the sets are incredible. I don't even really get it. Like, that felt so expensive. The whole movie felt so expensive because of the amount of people and set design.
Yeah.
But, I loved the flashback stuff.
Oh, it's so good.
It was really good.
And De Niro is just unbelievable.
It even like juxtaposed well with the present telling of what was happening with Michael. So not only was it a different story, because I think that could even be distracting because it's like, who cares? I just want to get back to whatever Michael's doing.
Yeah.
I actually think those worked in tandem together.
Well, what was really smart, so when this movie starts, I remember there's, a bunch of flashbacks and stuff like that. But what's really smart is, because when I find out, like if I had lived during the time in the 70s and they said, hey, they're making Godfather Part 2, it's coming out next year, I would say to myself, even with my love for sequels, I'd be like, no, I don't need that. That's stupid. Don't
Yeah.
do that. But they clearly had more to tell. And just the idea of telling two parallel stories just automatically like changes it. So like I wouldn't say that this movie's better than Godfather because it's just too different to really compare the two. Because it's told so differently and it feels like a Godfather movie, but it's very unique. It's just an interesting approach to a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of does feel like it's a part 2, not the second movie, if that makes sense.
So is this like another book?
No.
So the author just write the screenplay for this movie?
Him and Francis did.
Yeah.
And Francis had this idea where he said, I want to tell a story that is a father and a son, and it's walking through the same period in their life.
Uh-huh.
So we're seeing Vito Corleone beginning this crime family while Michael is continuing the crime family.
Yeah.
And they're roughly the same age at certain points in the movie. And just right there, it's like, brilliant.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I think that's why it doesn't feel jarring and weird that it's flashing back and forth.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
sometimes flashbacks really, really pull you out of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It does not do that in this movie.
Well, this and the first movie too, they really just feel like epic tales. Like they're so meaty and heavy that the transitions like that aren't as distracting to me.
Yeah. And I think both of these movies feel like they're true stories. And I think that lends itself to like your interest. And in a way they kind of are.
Yeah.
They're historical fiction, really. Yeah. But it just kind of feels like, oh, this happened and this director is like really spending his time to like tell the story of this real life crime family, even though it's not real.
Yeah.
But should we get into it a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
So in 1972, of course, Francis comes out with Godfather. We talked about it last week, highest grossing movie. But if you remember the studios of that year, the studios were like, this is not, like, we don't trust Francis. This is a disaster. It's going over budget, scheduling, all that stuff. One thing I saw that I didn't see last time was that Robert Duvall said that they had a director on set waiting for Francis, like, so that if they needed to fire him, someone could just walk right on.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, so, it was tense and stuff like that. And so then he goes on to make The Conversation. That's his next movie. It comes out in April of, I believe we're in the year 74. And then Godfather will come out in December of 74. So he comes out with 2 movies this year. And The Conversation, which stars Gene Hackman, and I watched this week for the first time, unbelievably good. Fredo is in it, and he is really great. And Robert Duvall's in it, too, for a couple of scenes. The Conversation, and it wins the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is basically the highest honor. I mean, because the Academy, even itself, as much as we love the Academy in America, it mostly recognizes American films. Mm-hmm. And when they're not American, they have to be in the international, although sometimes they can win, like Parasite. But Cannes is like, that's any country.
But you're talking about an American movie.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say is Cannes is like almost a bigger honor than winning the Oscar.
Okay.
If you win the Palme d'Or.
Okay.
So this is like The Conversation wins.
Okay.
And then he comes out with The Godfather later this year. And just to skip a little bit, The Godfather Part 2 will go on to win Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor by Robert De Niro, and he played the same character who won
Best Actor
last time, which that was the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
And it's only happened one other time with Joker, because Heath Ledger and Joaquin both played Joker. It wins Best Adapted Screenplay, and it wins Best Score and Best Art Direction.
Wow. And
it was still nominated for Al Pacino, supporting Michael Gazzo, who is Fredo.
Yeah, he definitely deserved one.
Lee Strasberg was also nominated. Talia Shire was nominated, and it was nominated for costume.
Cool.
So he takes the Palme d'Or home for The Conversation, and that's just the beginning of his award season reign. And what's crazy is, so the best score, the winner is Nito Rota, who did both the score to Godfather and Godfather 2. But Carmine Coppola also won best score, even though he's not listed in the movie as the composer. But he obviously contributed.
Yeah.
And it's also just something to note is this year in movies, these were all movies that were up for Oscars. We had Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles.
That movie got nominated for Best Picture?
It got nominated for something.
Oh, okay.
I didn't research what, but I'm just saying like how crazy the year of 1974 was. Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, Murder on the Orient Express, The Great Gatsby, which Francis Ford Coppola...
The Robert Redford one? Duh, obviously. Yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola wrote that screenplay, so he could have won for that as well. The Conversation, Chinatown, and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. All of those movies were up for Oscars and came out that year.
Uh-huh.
So that's crazy.
Yeah.
So then the screenplay of this movie is by Francis and Mario Puzo, and cinematography Gordon Willis. And the movie comes out December 20th, 1974. It has a $13 million budget. And domestically, it makes $57.3 million. So
I just feel like movies cost nothing to make back then.
Yeah. Well, I think still for inflation, I mean, we're still talking a mid-size budget
so
movie,
much
you know?
production went into this movie. That's crazy to me. I would just be
I know.
interested the production manager should have been nominated for some kind of organizational award, Oscar or something, like just crazy.
Yeah.
And he probably still went over budget and over time.
Yeah. So Puzo starts writing Godfather 2 before Godfather is even out.
Okay.
He starts writing it in 1971. And, you know, they wanted to juxtapose the rise of Vito with the fall of Michael. Not that it's like his fall, but his like moral fall. And let's see. Coppola, so this time around, the studio was like, yeah, do whatever you want. We don't care. You proved yourself with Godfather. So he stated, I don't know how old the interviews I saw were, but they were at least in the 90s, and he was like, oh, that was like the easiest movie for me to make, Godfather 2, because I was just able to do what I wanted to do.
Yep.
And no one was bothering me.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, and we've talked about Tim Burton, how like when he's given free reign, it usually is not as good.
Yeah.
But like with Francis, it works, I guess.
Yeah.
At least in this case.
Yeah.
And let's see, toward the end of the movie, when Robert De Niro has a mustache, I guess they just were talking about that for a long time. Should he have a mustache? Shouldn't he? And then they just flipped a coin.
Okay.
Kind of funny.
That's fine.
And then they had the first showing of this movie, when they like kind of premiered it to some audiences, everyone was like, this is horrible. Horrible. Apparently, it cut back and forth between Vito and Michael like more than twice as much.
Oh, yeah. I think that would be too much.
Yeah, really confusing. So then they cut it back.
Because they would spend like minimum 20 minutes with each one. I think more time was spent with Michael, obviously. But there was a long amount of time in between. Yeah,
it cuts like, I think like 10 times or so. And in the first cut, it was like 24 times.
Ooh, yeah, that's too much.
Audiences were like, there's not enough time to like invest. And then you're like in the next person. So then they edited it, and now it's considered one of the best movies ever made. And then my last note is that so the end of this movie, there's this wonderful scene where the family, it's a flashback in between, I guess, the two settings of the movie, where the whole family's at the dinner table and they're waiting for Marlon Brando to show up. And they're going to... It's
his birthday. It's a surprise party.
Well, they get there the day of the shoot. Marlon Brando is ready to go and show up and be Godfather as a nice little cameo. And I saw one source, but I couldn't find a citation, so I'm not sure, where like Brando basically was like, he felt like Paramount was treating him really poorly. And but whatever the reason was, the day of shooting comes and Brando is not there. He does not show up to the shoot.
And they can't get a hold of him.
So then Francis says, what if it's a surprise party?
Uh-huh.
And then they shoot it like it's a surprise party scene. And you know what? Frankly,
I think it worked.
I think knowing the knowledge that he could have been in that scene, watching the scene again, I'm like, I think it would have taken away from that scene.
I think it could have. I think the more than anything, I think the scene's about Michael. It's not about Vito, but I can understand because it's the end of the movie, and this whole time we've seen them alternating. Yeah. And then to have one of the last scenes be them together, I think would be really sweet.
Yeah.
But I don't think it makes or breaks the movie, because I think more than anything, we needed to see Michael reveal that he wasn't doing what his father wanted him to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fine.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that he wasn't in it, because it just kind of adds to the mythology of this Godfather character. And I think on a subconscious level, it would have taken away from the impact of Robert De Niro throughout the whole movie being Vito.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, Brando missed out on that cake. Holy crap, that cake looked so good.
It was big.
It was huge.
That's
I couldn't believe
cake.
one person could lift that out of there.
I know. So, I mean, you got to have strong wrists to lift that, baby.
Yeah. That cake looks so good.
But, yeah. So that's
interesting.
That's what I got on the notes.
Wow.
So what do you got for me?
So last time I did not cover Fredo, who was played by John Cazale. Or Cazale. I don't... Whatever. Cazale. But
I said a different name of someone who was nominated. I'll look that up while I...
This is him. Absolutely. Also,
no,
it
is.
Fredo.
That's definitely him, yeah.
He is in Dog Day Afternoon.
That's right.
I think when we were watching The Godfather, we realized this.
Yeah.
He's also in The Deer Hunter. Micah.
I still gotta
watch it. He's in The Deer Hunter. And then the conversation, like you said, I Knew It Was You. And The Freshman. He's in a lot of classic movies. He died at 42.
That's
he died in
sad.
1978. And then...
Okay, so can I bug in real quick? I'm sorry. But he was not nominated.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Who was nominated was Frankie, who is Michael Gazzo.
Huh?
Frankie, the guy who's in prison and kills himself in the bathtub.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Lee Strasberg, who's Hyman Roth, was nominated.
Okay.
So
I think he also deserved a nomination.
Oh, yeah.
He was so good.
I'm surprised that John Cazale did not get nominated, though, because he's really amazing. That's
he was so good.
That seems like an overstatement or a oversight.
And Talia Shire, who we did not cover as well.
Yeah.
She plays the sister Connie. She is Adrian.
Yes.
And Rocky. And the Rocky franchise. She's also in Kingdom, Dreamland, Palo Alto, The Return of Joe Rich. We found out that she is the mother to Jason Schwartzman,
which I had no idea. And he's
a Coppola, just like everyone else in Hollywood.
Her brother is Francis Ford Coppola.
Sorry, yeah, her brother is
It's just crazy. That family is so crazy.
Can you do me a favor?
Yes.
Can you Google her husband? And
seriousness with which you looked at me, I thought I was in trouble.
Because Jason Schwartzman's brother, who I don't remember the name of, he is the love interest in Princess Diaries. And upon learning that Talia Shire is their mom, I'm like, oh, he kind of looks like his mom, Jason Schwartzman's brother. That makes sense. But I gotta know what who his dad is.
Jack Schwartzman. Here's a picture of him, Jack Schwartzman.
He doesn't look like either of his parents.
No, I'll try and find a different pic though, because maybe
what does he do? Who is he?
He's a film producer.
Okay.
Or was.
Lee Strasberg, who plays Hyman Roth, who was nominated for an Oscar for this movie, is also in Going in Style. The Cassandra Crossing, Skokie, Boardwalk. He kind of looks like him. He looks like his dad.
Kinda.
Yeah, he does. He kind of looks like his dad.
So Jack Schwartzman, if you want to follow along, and I think it was the first picture of him with his wife, Talia Shire, at the time wife.
Yeah.
So
It's so funny
continue.
to me. Did we say this in the last one? And if we did, I'm sorry. But how Nicolas Cage is a Coppola?
We did not say that.
Okay, I just think it's fun.
It is.
It's fun
crazy.
to know that, and I hope it blew a couple people's minds, because that surely blew my mind when I found that out. Because most of my life growing up, I mean, I love Nicolas Cage from like National Treasure. So as a kid, it's like he's the best, he's so cool. And then you grow up, you get a little bit wiser, a little bit older, and you're like, oh, he's an insane person.
Yeah.
And potentially an alien, according to Micah.
Yes.
And then,
well, you can't just say that and then not let me explain why.
Okay.
My family went on a trip to New Orleans, and we did a grave tour.
Yeah.
Because they have those crazy cemeteries with like the above ground, like little mausoleums.
Uh-huh.
And Nicolas Cage has one there. And the tour guide was like he bought the
Nicolas
plot.
Cage
so
is not dead, for anyone who doesn't know.
He bought the plot so that he can be buried there. And it's a pyramid.
Illuminati, man.
It is a small pyramid. and because of some of the roles I've seen him in where it seems like his whole approach is, this is what humans do.
Yeah.
I think he might be an alien. I think it's up for debate. I like Nicolas Cage.
So you think when he
but I think he might be an alien.
perishes from this earth and they bury him in the mausoleum, the pyramid will shoot back up into space?
I was actually thinking more that it would be some sort of teleporting device where like an alien ship would come down, a beam would shoot to the tip of the pyramid, and his like molecules would come up.
Oh, that's elaborate. That's science that we just frankly don't have yet.
Not yet, but it's science they have.
Yeah. That's fun. He's great. You just see him at a role and you're like, he's either being transcendent right now or a buffoon. And I can't tell, but I can't look away.
Well,
and then it's just crazy.
Do the community, tell them the Community thing if they haven't seen Community.
There is an episode of Community where there is a whole class based on, is Nicolas Cage good or not at acting? And Abed, for those of you who don't know, that character is he's a film buff in the show, and he drives himself crazy. Trying to figure out if Nicolas Cage is good at acting or not. Very funny episode, very funny bit. And
I also was just like, I relate to this fully. Because every time I go into a movie with Nicolas Cage, it's like, it's either going to like straight up suck
we watched
or great.
The Scorsese movie, the ambulance one. Not my favorite Scorsese movie, but a good Nicolas Cage role.
Yeah.
He was good in it.
What that's called. I'll look it up.
But if anyone, I mean, you got to watch a bad movie every now and then. It is good. It is cathartic. And one of those bad movies that you should watch is Vampire's Kiss, starring Nicolas Cage, because that is one of the craziest performances I've ever seen in a movie. And it's so funny. It's one of those bad movies where you don't get bored.
Yeah, and that's the movie where he does the
ABC.
A, B, C, D, E.
And he goes through the whole alphabet.
Yeah, and he literally,
when he's crying
says, oh, boo-hoo, boo-hoo.
So it's just funny because I get to a point in my life where I'm like, how did he get to where he is? I know he's been around for a long time. I know that. But how did he get where he is? And I think I might have even seen a tiny bit of like an actor looking back on his career kind of thing and him talking about his career. And I'm like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And then you find out he's a Coppola. And then it's like, okay, I think that might have had a little bit to do with his career.
I'm not saying he can't be a good actor, but
no, had he been a good actor
in the Coppola family, I'm not sure he would have had the career he had. I think that's fair to say.
There is some 80s movie he's in that I can't remember where it's like a rom-com or something.
Uh-huh.
It's not a John Hughes movie. But I think he's supposed to be cute in it.
Yeah.
Like the cute or mysterious guy. And it's just like, I can't do it. That's so weird, man. Too weird. The more Scorsese movie is Bringing Out the Dead. That's right.
Yeah.
Not my favorite Scorsese movie, but a good Nicolas Cage performance.
Yeah, he's very good.
He's really good in it. Okay. Michael V. Gazzo, who plays Frankie Gazzo. Yeah. He is in Fingers, XXX, Return of Xander Cage. Last Action Hero.
There's 3 Xander Cage movies.
He plays Torelli.
I bet he's one. Yeah, I
think he's like a henchman.
I think he might be like a cop.
Got it.
I think.
Johnny Bago, Jake and the Fat Man. He's in some not great looking movies. And then I did also want to cover Bruno Kirby who plays young Clemenza, who is in the flashbacks. He is in When Harry Met Sally. It was so fun seeing him in this movie. He was so good.
He was really good.
He's also in City Slickers and Good Morning Vietnam, Sleepers a lot.
So who is Clemenza? Is Clemenza in Godfather? Like that character, like an older
I guess so.
version of him?
If it says young Clemenza.
Okay.
I don't remember.
I'll look it up.
And then I also just wanted to touch on Dominic Chianese, who plays Johnny Ola. Mike and I, so he's pretty early in the movie, and Mike and I both separately, quietly, we were like, holy crap. I think that's Junior Soprano.
Yeah, yeah.
And he starts talking, and we were both just like, holy crap. June is in this movie. So he plays Junior Soprano in The Sopranos. And that blew our minds.
Yeah.
And he was amazing in this movie.
Yeah. The character Clemenzo is the character in the first movie who says, take the cannoli, leave the gun.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I did not catch that. But then when you said young Clemenzo, I thought, oh, he must be in the first movie. Good polls on there. Yeah, The Sopranos, Junior, we love him.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And he must have been born an old man like Robert Duvall as well.
He looks pretty different, but yeah, I get what you're saying. He was in this movie. I think I wonder if part of it has to do with Al Pacino's a pretty short person, short being 5'7", which is actually kind of average. He must be pretty tall because he seemed very tall in this movie.
Yeah. But he seems so short in Sopranos.
James Gandolfini, I think, is also a tall person, and that's who he has most of his scenes with.
Can we watch some Sopranos today?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I know I watching these movies, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch Casino. I gotta watch some more Sopranos. I kind of want to watch Goodfellas again.
Yeah.
The Departed would like, you know.
Although The Departed, interestingly enough, it's mostly Irish.
Yeah. Oh, and I gotta watch Irishman again. Gotta watch The Irishman, because that's like. Well, so I was thinking about this morning, that these two Godfather movies are very. They're actually very quiet movies, I would say.
Yeah.
It's a lot of just talking. It's some intense stuff, and there are some intense violence, but especially this one. I feel like this one is not very violent, and it's just a quiet character study. And I was thinking about Scorsese, because he's the other great, Italian American like mafia movie guy, and his movies during like the 80s and 90s are just so electric.
Yeah,
they're like just going. Goodfellas, Casino, those movies just are like 100% the whole time. But then I thought, The Irishman is kind of like his Godfather, because that movie's much more quiet.
Yeah.
It takes its time. It's really long, and it's not as violent, and it just kind of is like not that his other movies are not character studies, because they are.
Yeah.
But I realized that movie's a lot more Godfather than Goodfellas is.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Goodfellas is pretty flashy.
Yeah.
In all the right ways.
So
this
movie,
movie,
top 5 movies for me. I love Goodfellas.
Godfather Part 2.
Yes.
Made me realize very much so that this family is a cult.
Okay.
Because yes, it's like business motivated. It's how to make money, and they do it illegally. But people are prisoners in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
The only way they're going to get out is if they're going to get killed. They can't get out, because if someone just chooses to leave, they have way too much information. They're going to get killed. They can't. No one can just walk away from this unscathed. And it is one of the most interesting parts of the movie, which is actually not a huge part of the movie, is Diane Keaton's character Kay, just like the last movie. So she's not Italian American, but she married into this family, and she gets to the point where she is a prisoner in it and wants to leave, to the point where she does something unforgivable to leave. And I mean, he didn't kill her, but I don't think he would kill the mother of his children, Michael. Yeah. But I think that's the only thing that keeps him from not doing it.
Absolutely.
But it's just like, sure, if religion's any part of it, it's Catholicism.
Yeah.
Because the whole movie starts with the first communion. But in terms of like actually holding on to those like beliefs and like the sacraments and stuff, they don't really believe in any of it, I don't feel. Does that make sense? Like it's more
Yeah.
just like like family's the religion.
Well, what I find really fascinating about these first two movies, I can't remember the third one, but I'm vaguely remembering a lot of Catholic like imagery in my brain. Is that most of the big violent parts, or just a lot of big moments, are also connected to Catholicism in some way. So, like in the first movie, the child's first communion,
The baptism in the first movie?
baptism, I'm sorry, is when he kills the heads of the 5 families. In this movie, when Fredo gets killed, he's saying a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
So it's like their religion is tied into their identity, but also like the irony of this religious belief and then these insane acts of violence are happening at the same time.
Well, it's like they're able to turn it off or not turn it off.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, that's a part of my life, and then this is a part of my life. And then that other thing's also a part of my life, but not all at once.
Yeah.
Is how it kind of feels.
But there's certainly a paper to be written, or like a YouTube video essay on like the faith juxtaposition of violence in the Godfather movies.
Well, yeah, especially, so to go even further a little bit with the cult stuff, and I know we're talking about fictional things, but like in Sopranos, we just watched an episode where Chris becomes a made man, and there was basically a ritual to go into it.
Yeah.
And they had to they burned a card, and they had to like rub it between their hands. And as they're doing all of these rites, Tony is saying like, at this point moving forward, we are above your family. We are above your wife. Like, we come first.
Yeah.
Like, these men become first before anyone else. And if you do anything against those interests or against us, you will die. Like, you will be killed. Like, it's just very cult mentality, I think.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because so going back to Godfather, like these people are all born into it, and it's as if they don't know better, or like this is the best way.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting in this movie because they show how Vito came from nothing to start all of this. But then then it cuts back to Michael and his family. They live literally on a compound, and Kay can't even leave the compound because she's not safe. But is she safe inside as well?
She's not.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah, really good observations, Jordan. You're smart. So let's dive.
So let's get through this 3.5 hour movie.
Yeah, we'll have to put an intermission break for our listeners, right?
Totally.
And okay, so the movie begins, and we're in, I think, like 1901 or something like that.
1901 in Sicily.
And we see, this nice crawler that's saying, Vito Corleone was born on this island, and his father was killed by the Don on the island.
And they live in Corleone, Sicily.
That's right.
So, because right now it's Vito Andolini, not Vito Corleone.
And I'm just thinking about the payoff of that is just so good. But so he is a child, and they're walking his father in a funeral, and then we hear gunshots. They drop the casket, and they all hide. And Vito's brother, who had sworn revenge on the Don, is killed by obviously the Don. Then Vito's mother and Vito are brought before the Don, and
she's pleading with him not to take her son because she just knows that he's going to kill her son.
Well, she's pleading for him to take their son and bring him into the family.
Yeah, but she was also saying how weak he was, so he will never grow up to take revenge on you. He's too weak and dumb.
Yep.
So just spare him. But at this point, the Andolinis have become too threatening. To the Don.
So then he shoots the mother.
Crazy.
She goes flying.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out how they did some of these.
I don't get it.
I mean, they must be squibs, a lot of them, but
on
I don't know
how. Face?
I don't know how you can do that on their face.
I don't get it.
It feels like, but I don't know that they had this back then. It feels like the only way they could do it is if they had like small paintball guns or something to shoot them in the face.
I mean, I know it's like different times. I don't even think they would do that though.
That's what I mean. But I wonder if we watched one of these kills and went like frame by frame, because sometimes like on a Tarantino movie, you see all this blood and stuff, but if you slow down, sometimes you can tell like, oh, he shot from that side of the screen, but blood's coming from off frame where someone is like throwing a bucket of blood clearly.
Oh,
But-
really? I've never done that before.
Oh, there's stuff like that in movies all the time. But
Fun.
if you're not, when it's fast paced and you're not slowing it down, your
and
brain
you're
doesn't
shocked.
register
Shock
it.
value.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people who are like, that means they suck. But we'll be talking a lot about blood this month on Patreon because we're covering Kill Bill Volume 1.
Spraying of blood.
So go to patreon.com/Micah McCaw, link in the show notes, okay? But, so they...
Mom gets killed. Vito is on the run.
Yes. And so then he hooks up with a family, and they smuggle him onto a boat that is headed toward America.
Ellis Island.
So we are seeing, like, the true beginnings of the Corleone family.
And to, because in the last movie, you see they're a family of such prominence, a family worth assassinating.
Uh-huh.
And in this movie, you're seeing, like, oh, he didn't have anything.
Uh-huh.
Like, true rags to riches American dream kind of thing.
It makes it, I almost feel like if you watch this movie, it would be fun to watch that cut they made for TV where it's all chronological.
Mm-hmm.
Because just knowing, like, how Vito became how he became, and then watching The Godfather again, I'm sure that colors a lot of his decisions.
Yeah.
In a much different light.
Yeah.
And you totally do see how it is all about respect and family and friendship to him, not fear.
Yeah. Yeah, because even in Sicily, that was ruled by fear.
Yes. Yeah.
So he is in Ellis Island alone, does not speak English, and becomes an American citizen. They change his name to Corleone.
And I saw a nice little detail that they put an X on him, and that means that the people who were running the Ellis Island thought that he had, like, a mental issue.
Oh, just because he maybe couldn't speak English?
But remember at the beginning of the movie when she's talking to the Don and she's like, he's not mentally all there.
I thought she was just saying that, though.
I thought so too, but then the fact that they put it, it's like, oh, okay, I think he's literally not speaking.
Uh-huh.
And she says how he doesn't speak. So I think it's just one of those things where he just didn't speak for a while.
Uh-huh.
And people thought he was
experienced a disability.
Yeah. Which doesn't make you any less than, but certainly at the time they didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And they did bad things. But and I just wrote Arrive in America, just a brilliant idea for a sequel. Cuz I just feel like right off the bat you're like if I had gone and seen this movie in theaters, I'd be like, okay, actually I'm not worried about this movie.
Yeah. They are confident in where they're going.
And then we cut to Anthony Corleone as he is at his first communion.
Mm-hmm. And they have the most lavish first communion party I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's very similar but different to, like, the wedding at The Godfather, and people are making requests to Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And
one guy who is Frankie comes all the way from New York to do it.
Yeah. And it's just the way that Coppola captures people who are not the actors. It's just such a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And everything just feels so real. But I mean, the way he captures actors, I mean, I'm just telling you, because it's sort of died out. There's a few filmmakers that still do this, but just less coverage for a movie like this. That setting up one camera and having three actors have a conversation, it's, for the most part, it's just better if they're good actors than being like, okay, we're going to get the wide and then the three close-ups and then maybe a couple of mids.
Yeah.
So that we can just keep cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting.
Yeah.
Because these people, and I didn't realize this, but Francis comes from, like, a play directing background.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And when you watch his movies knowing that, it's like, oh, okay. That makes sense why you would set up one camera and be like, I trust the actors.
Yeah.
Go, act.
Yeah. So one of the first people he meets with is the senator of Nevada. And so at this point, a lot of the movie takes, at the end of the last movie, the Corleones are moving out of their estate in New York. And in this movie, you see that they have relocated to Nevada City.
Yep.
And because I just had to connect all these dots because I just wasn't sure why they were moving in the last movie. But then you also, if you remember the last movie, Michael came to Mo Green and pretty much said, we're taking this over. So Corleones relocate to Nevada City to start running casinos.
Yeah.
So they want to acquire a new casino, and they need like all these permits and stuff, which is like $25,000. And he needs this from the senator. Like the senator can help him get this and stuff.
Yeah.
And the senator says, you can pay me $250,000 and 5% of the gross, basically forever.
Yeah.
And it was, the senator actor was really good because you could tell how much contempt he had for Italian Americans.
Oh yeah.
Like especially this, I think because this family they feel like rats to him.
Uh-huh.
And it is just one of those things. It's just so interesting where he's pretty much telling him like, you guys think you can just come into our beautiful country and take this all over. And it's like, well, one, Michael was born here.
Yeah.
So he has just as much as right as you do.
And he fought for this country.
And two, the senator, it's like, you're not American. Like you are probably from, what generation American are you?
Yeah. You're not a Native American.
No. So you're on stolen land too. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that they just do a good job of that, I think, in this movie. Like I think kind of continues from last movie.
Yeah.
Because even later on in the court proceedings, the senator is saying how much he loves Italian Americans.
Oh, I know.
Crazy.
The senator is great, and it's cool seeing how, like, in the last movie, they're starting to get into, like, the drug world, and that's part of the, like, changeover.
Mm-hmm.
And in this movie, it's like, now we're starting to get into politics.
Yeah, which in the last movie, they mentioned that they own politicians, and I thought it was great in this movie that they showed those relationships.
Yeah, and it's very cool because it is just... and they mention there's a couple comments about like presidential candidates,
yep.
and there's a Senate hearing later in the movie, and it's like, oh man, and
this
as far
is
as
like bumming me out.
Yeah, and as far as I know from my little knowledge of like mafia history, I think this is around the time when people started like this stuff was happening.
Yeah,
with the Italian mafias and stuff like that. Oh, it's so good.
So pretty much Michael tells him it's not going to go the way you want.
Yeah.
See you later.
And he says my offer is this. Nothing. And the guy's like, whatever. Okay. We'll just see about that, and then we'll follow up on that later.
Yeah.
But one really crucial glue to this movie, even though Talia Shire is in like 3 scenes, she did earn that Oscar nomination. So she shows up, and she has this guy named Merle with her, and he's going to be her husband. There's references to this would be, I think, like her 3rd husband. Mm-hmm. Obviously, her first was killed. Yeah,
because he said the ink on your divorce isn't even dry yet.
Yeah.
And then she has children, I'm assuming from the second marriage. I mean, she was still pregnant from the first marriage too.
Yeah.
But like, it sounds like her children are somewhat grown up, and she is not a mother to them.
Yeah. And when she shows up, she's kind of like dressed to the nines, and she shows up with this energy that's kind of like, I'm a new confident person. Mm-hmm. And we did not see this in her in the previous movie. So it's kind of like, what's her deal? And then you remember, okay, at the end of Godfather, she pretty much knew Michael killed her husband.
Yeah.
So she hates Michael.
Yeah.
She hates him. And so she's asking him for money, and he's like, what are you talking about? You can't ask me for money and like abandon your children. Families first. You could stay here. But in front of the guy, he's saying this, don't marry this man. You will disappoint me if you marry this man.
Oh man, that was so much tension in that room.
I know. And she's just kind of like, has this like, and I'm not even necessarily throwing a judgment on her, but she just has like a woe is me. Like, how could you treat me like this, Michael?
Yeah.
Maybe she's justified that. Maybe she's not. I don't know. It's complicated.
We really don't
That's
get
the
enough.
beauty of these.
We really only get like Michael's perspective of it, which is interesting.
Yeah. And so, oh yes, and I did write this, and this kind of speaks to like the religious aspects, but the irony of the puritanical beliefs that they have of like divorce, and when Fredo's wife is like yelling on the dance floor and very drunk, and then the fact that they're turning around and murdering people and buying politicians and stuff is just crazy.
I know.
Now, on the one hand, especially, another interesting thing that just popped into my head is as we're seeing these Vito flashbacks, we see that in a way, that this family was kind of forced to do this because you had this Don walking around in New York forcing people to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, he was going to make police come and arrest him and send him back to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that the family is like forced into this world of crime, and then now it's like, and they're still in it and they can't get out. It's that
and I
vicious
think that's
cycle.
What the newest season of Fargo does well of showing.
Yeah.
Of how it became that complicated because it had to be.
Yeah.
Because the system was broken to begin with.
Yeah, and it's like you wonder why large groups of people get desperate. And it's like, well, when you look at history, like, yes, I think we all believe that there's redemption for people and they can get out of things. But there is stuff that's more complicated than, oh yeah, if I just walk out of this compound, I'll be fine. It's like, no, you will get murdered now if you walk out of that compound.
Or we think you're running away.
Yeah.
We think you won't come back and we just can't have it.
So it's so complicated.
I know.
And it's crazy too in that scene where Fredo's wife is dancing, we see that Fredo's still a coward.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's crazy. So to remind people, Fredo was the one who was driving Vito around in the first movie, and that's when Vito gets shot like 5 times by like a rival gang, and Fredo does nothing but cry. He doesn't even stop. He actually drops his gun. So in this movie, you see his wife is out of control, and I think it's Tom, who is Robert Duvall, is like, either you need to take care of her or someone else will. And he says, I can't.
Yeah.
So a man comes up and just picks up his wife and takes her away. Yeah. How humiliating is that?
Yeah.
And you feel this, and I think it's just how the movie establishes, and the story establishes this feeling of like, no one respects her, not just because she's drunk, but she's not Italian.
Yeah.
She's just some blonde lady who he met at a casino, and no one probably talks to her.
Yeah.
And even when they were all sitting around the table eating dinner, she was there and Kay was there, the family and the wives. And Merle was there too.
Yeah.
And Michael's mom, so Mama Corleone, says something like, you can kind of tell disparaging in Italian. You can just get that sense by like the look on her face about Merle and Fredo's wife.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Totally. And then we also have Kay and Michael are dancing, and he talks about how they're working to get the business legitimate. And she said, yeah, you told me that we'd be legitimate in 5 years. You told me that 7 years ago.
Yeah. And that's also when we learn that she's pregnant.
That's true. And then party's over. Michael goes upstairs.
Well, no, he has to talk to Frankie.
Oh, yes, yes.
So Frankie came from New York because he's having issues with the Roth Empire, which they are in like basically another type of mafia, but they're Jewish.
Yeah.
Therefore, they don't trust, like Frankie does not trust them because they're not Italian. And so basically that group is giving his group a lot of trouble. And he's come to Michael to like, help me. We got to figure something out. They're basically like coming on our territory, taking stuff. And that's when Michael says, we've always had a really good relationship with Roth. Dad has always had a really good relationship with him. And that's when Frankie says he's always respected him and he's always worked well with him, but he was never family about Roth.
He never trusted him, I think.
Never trusted him.
Yeah.
And Michael has this air of like, well, things are a little bit different now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's not going to help Frankie.
And then that night, Michael goes up to his room, and Kay kind of wakes up when he comes in, and she says, why are the drapes open? Mm-hmm. And then machine gun fire mows through the room. So someone attempts to kill Michael. Mm-hmm. And so after that, Michael is like, okay, gotta leave. Tom, you've always been a true brother to me. You have to run the business. I trust you completely.
So what's interesting about this, because remember in the last one we talked about the last movie, so Tom was picked up off the street by Vito because he was an orphan and raised him like his own son, and raised him to be the consigliere, the lawyer of the family. So he basically knows all the ins and outs of what's going on, but he can never be in control of any of it because he's not truly family. So you're thinking, oh, he's giving him control of the family. That's
Mhm.
awesome. But really, I think Michael is just giving him the janitor duty
Okay.
to make sure things continue running and take care of any of the issues. I have to go take care of the real issues, though. And I'm not going to tell you about any of it.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
So I think
Yeah.
he's still keeping Tom in the dark.
Yeah.
About things. And I think like maybe Michael sees it as like, you know, it's so high profile, only I can know about what I really am going to do.
Mhm.
But it is interesting because I feel like, because Robert Duvall's not in it as much as the last movie.
No.
But yeah, I just think that he doesn't give him much to do.
Yeah.
Funny, like ironically.
Well, and as far as parallels go, Vito Corleone has in the 1900s fled to New York because he was trying to be killed, and Michael now has to flee because he's been trying to be killed. So there's that syncing up as well. And then we cut to 1917, and we get to see Bobby De Niro. And he does the voice he does.
Yeah.
Kind of unbelievable.
Yeah. He does the Marlon Brando voice.
He does it, but he did it in such a smart way where it doesn't sound, he didn't like impersonate it. He made it sound like what that voice would sound like if he was young. So it's still raspy, but he's not going full really smart.
It's unbelievable. He's unbelievable.
He's just one of the best, you know?
Yeah.
And he, I lost my train of thought, but he is one of the best.
So he just works at like a grocery store. He lives in Little Italy.
Yeah.
He is married in 1917 to Mama Corleone.
Yeah.
They live in this really tiny apartment.
They have Sonny.
And you learn that this man called the Black Hand is the guy that's running the neighborhood. Like you just mentioned previously, he goes around people collecting money.
Don Fanucci.
Yeah, Don Fanucci. So he's like the tax collector, you know, for this neighborhood. And if you don't pay him, you're gonna get yours. So
he rules with fear.
And you can tell pretty much immediately. Vito is like, I'm gonna become that man. Like that things are gonna change. Like that is the man in power. I want that power.
Okay. I didn't read it the same way.
But there's like a fascination to how he does it. And I think a big part of it later on, you kind of learn it's like he disagrees with how he does it.
That's more
and
what
it's like he's not
on.
taking care of this neighborhood. I will take care of this neighborhood.
Once you reworded it, I was right there. I'm right there with you. Yeah.
So that's the same segment where he is in the grocery store working and he gets fired.
Yep.
Because the Black Hand forces the guy who runs the shop to hire his nephew.
Yep. And meanwhile, too, I mean, the whole sequence where he first sees Don Fanucci because they're at the play and the guy's stiffing the guy who owns the theater or whatever, and his daughter's in the play, and Clemenzo is with him.
No,
it's a different guy. I can't remember his name, but he's like, oh, this woman's so beautiful. They go backstage and he sees Don and he's like, we gotta leave.
That's like his girlfriend.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm just gonna leave.
This guy has his girlfriend with a knife to her throat, and his reaction is, we gotta go.
Yeah, not even gonna try.
Yeah.
So you know this guy has power.
Yeah.
He wears a cool white suit and a white fedora, and that actor's having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the sets are insane, of course.
Unbelievable. Do not understand how they did it. Do not understand how they did this on time because of how chaotic it was. Because it's just all like a giant farmer's market and the camera is dollying almost any time it's outside.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
It's also nuts. Just think about this. Basically, in the span of like 12 months or so, Francis Ford Coppola basically shot 3 movies. Because this is basically 2 movies, and he shot The Conversation.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason we talk about him when we talk about great American filmmakers.
Yeah.
I don't know what those reasons are, but just kidding. So he gets laid off. Okay. Now we're already back into Michael. There's more with Michael. Michael goes to Miami, and he talks to Hyman Roth, who I said, that's a cute old man.
He reminds me of Harvey Keitel in The Irishman.
Yeah.
Just so cute.
I liked too, and I don't know if this was them trying to distinguish between like the Italians and the Jewish heritage, but Roth is like laid back, like he has his feet up, and he's always wearing like
he's either not wearing a shirt,
or he's
very
more
loose
leisurely,
fitting.
and stuff. But the Italians are always like, it's a suit. I am sitting down. I am standing up, like.
I think that just shows his comfortability with his status. Like, I am number one.
Yeah. And so he talks to him, and Michael basically says that he knows that Frankie ordered the hit on him.
Yeah.
Which we will find out later is not true.
Yeah.
And
I think this part gets a little muddy.
Well, yes, it does.
Yeah.
But I think Michael is trying to, like, he's telling him he's sure it was Roth, when I don't think he's sure who did it at all. He's trying to get information.
I think so too, and I'm not even saying it's like bad or anything, because the
it's
movie's
objectively not bad.
But it does get a little muddy. But it is like, just let the movie take you through this.
Yeah, the part that I was confused for like an hour and a half was when he was like, "Yeah, Frankie ordered this hit," and then the whole movie I was like, "It didn't seem like Frankie did order the hit."
Yeah,
but then they like explicitly say later that he did not.
No, so
I was like, oh, I just needed to trust that they would explain that.
So here is, I just got a question, I guess. So he says, I know
yes, up front.
Yeah, I know it was Frankie. He says this to Roth. And he pretty much says, if you want to kill Frankie, you can, to Roth.
Okay. I don't remember him saying that, but
he says something about whatever you think needs to happen to Frankie can happen to Frankie. So shortly after, we're in New York, and Frankie, they're trying to kill Frankie, the Roth group, by strangling him. It does not work because a policeman shows up.
Yeah.
And I'm just a little confused why they didn't finish the job. Like, at that point, like, they just couldn't, therefore he's just still alive.
Well, I think it played into their favor because when they attack Frankie, they say, this is from Michael Corleone. And I think that was part of why it was confusing, too, because you didn't know that it wasn't Michael's guys doing it until like an hour later in the movie. And so the whole movie, Frankie, wants to... That's why he's okay with being a witness in the Senate hearing.
Yeah, because he thinks Michael has done this to him.
When in reality, Michael didn't. Roth did it.
Yeah.
So I think once they got him on board with like the Senate stuff, there's like no reason to kill Frankie anymore.
Yeah.
Or actually what probably more like, this is what happened. This makes more sense. What am I talking about? That happens to Frankie, and he's like, I can only go to the police. And so that's when he's putting like witness protection and stuff.
Yeah.
So
when he kills himself, does he do it because he feels like he wronged the family?
Let's talk about that when we get there.
Okay. So that happens to Frankie. So there's an attempt on his life that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Michael goes to Roth about this kind of stuff, but then they're also going to start striking up this really huge business deal that involves them. I know I might be jumping. It's a long movie.
There's a lot of stuff in between that, but
they go to Cuba.
Okay, before they go to Cuba.
Yeah.
Michael goes to Frankie, who is in the house from Godfather. He owns the house of Godfather, which is really cool. And he's like, in my house, you did this in my house. He's blaming Frankie. But then somewhere in that conversation, or maybe he wasn't blaming him, he says, I know Roth did it. So I feel like Michael is trying to kind of pin the two because he knows one of the two did this. And so Frankie is like...
I think he's also trying to disgrace him because you let this happen to our family.
Sure.
This is what the movie's about. Family.
And so they have a confrontation. Then Junior from The Sopranos calls Roth, and he calls Fredo. And so we're like, okay, so Fredo's involved in this somehow.
Yep.
More on that later. And then they attempt to kill Frankie, which we talked about. Tom goes to the senator who they have...
Tom goes to the mayor.
Tom goes to the senator who they have framed for murdering a prostitute. So now he's in their back pocket.
That was nuts, man.
That was
they
very
orchestrated this thing. They somehow, and they didn't get into how because they didn't need to, but somehow they lured that they probably knew the senator had vices. So they lured him into a brothel. Yeah. And then they apparently drugged him or something. And
Murdered
he wakes
the prostitute.
up. Well, does he actually do it though? Because all I know is he woke up and a prostitute was dead.
I don't think he murdered her.
I don't think he did either. But so what I'm saying is they drugged him, and he woke up in bed with a dead prostitute. Huh? And so he is understandably freaking out. End of his career moment. You know, this is the end of
Tom's
him.
Tom's like, you don't have to worry about anything.
Well, because Tom's like, it happened here. It happened on our turf. Like
she's a nobody. No one's going to know she existed.
We will take care of you. So pretty much, you know, when we're introduced to the senator, he's talking about how much he hates this family and hates Italian Americans. And then this terrible, terrible thing happens that he's involved in. And they got his back. And he's like, I owe him everything.
Yeah.
Crazy.
You got to wonder, though, because one, he could go, I owe them everything. They really saved me. But there might be in the back of his mind him knowing that they framed him and set it up.
I think it's a threat.
And they have the power. So he's like, either way, I have no options.
Yep.
And guess what? I'm not getting that $250,000 from Michael, and I am happy to not get it.
That's the offer he can't refuse.
So yes, now they're turning over their interest in Cuba. Fredo shows up in Cuba. The Cuba stuff is a little harder for me to track.
Yeah.
So just in terms of the details.
I don't exactly know what the business is, but I do know that, so they're in Cuba, basically like this is a tour of Cuba, of Havana, and like where all of your money is going to be made. You just have to give me $2 million to show me that you're serious in whatever this investment is.
Yeah.
It probably is gambling or hotels.
Yeah.
But he meets a lot of people. There is that scene where they're in a room with several different men. They're like, I think some are not even American. It's just men from around the world who are like businessmen. And it's kind of like a similar meeting. It's almost like a new heads of households, like in the last movie.
Like when they're talking about the drugs in the last movie?
Yes.
It reminded me of that scene too.
Yeah, so but what's interesting is you're seeing that these are men who control the telephone companies.
Yeah.
Or I can't remember.
They're handing around that gold phone.
That was crazy.
I love that shot because the camera's just dollying as it goes, and it's fun. It was fun. I think the actors did a great job where some of them are like, "Oh, this is really cool.
Heavier than I thought it would be."
And then some are kind of like, "I'll look at it for what's the proper amount." And then Michael just grabs it and just passes it. He doesn't care at all about it.
Yeah. But it's so like it's heads of companies that are like legal companies. Not in the last movie when it was not legal stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this stuff in this movie is legal. It's basically fronts for illegal activity.
Right.
But that's an interesting upgrade from the last movie.
Yeah.
And basically, like, Roth is bringing him around to all these things and introducing him to all these things. So this is Michael making the family legitimate. This is in the process of that. I think that's the biggest thing to know.
Yeah.
Of course, Michael knows that not if this all is above board and someone's going to try and kill him.
Yeah.
Because someone already has tried.
And while he's there, he figures out that, or maybe it's before, I don't know. I can't remember the exact moment he knows that Roth tried to kill him. But
I can't remember either.
He knows that he killed him or attempted to kill him. And there's this great scene where Roth has like seen doctors and stuff like that. And Roth basically kind of owns up to trying to kill him, and he says it wasn't personal, it was business, okay? And he says, here's what happened. There was this guy, Mo Green, and he ran Las Vegas, and yes, he was intense, and he spoke his mind, maybe talked too much, but for some reason, he was killed.
Okay, so hold on, though. Michael wasn't talking about himself. Someone else got killed.
Okay.
And it might have been not Sonny, but it was someone from the last movie, I think, who got killed, and Michael was like, whatever happened to him?
Okay, I don't remember that.
I don't think he was talking about himself, because that's when he starts talking about Mo Green, and it's saying all the things that you're saying. He got killed, and I had to move on.
Yeah.
So, Michael, you're just going to have to move on. Maybe he was talking about himself.
I think he was, because...
But he's telling him, like, you just got to move on because I already have.
But what was interesting, and maybe I'm misreading that scene, but I read it as he's saying, like, you got to move on, Michael. It's not personal, it's business. But I did try to kill you because you killed Mo Green, and I know you did that. But it was a business decision, even though it really was personal.
I didn't think it was to get back at him for Mo Green, but maybe it was. There's a lot of subtext.
Yes, and it's long too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he says it's the career we've chosen. You know, that's what happens. And then Fredo comes in, and he delivers the $2 million to Michael, and there's some tension between him and Michael's really watching him. And then they go to this like sex show in Cuba.
Well, before that,
okay.
They're getting drinks, just Fredo and Michael, and that's when Michael tells him like that he's a job for Fredo and he needs him to do a couple of things. He needs to show some men a good time before their big meeting, and also I'm going to be assassinated tonight. It's New Year's Eve, and Fredo was like, "Holy crap! What? Explain this." And he explains it, and he says, "Well, I'm going to kill Roth before the New Year."
Yeah.
So he's going to try to get Roth first. So Fredo takes all these business guys, including that senator, and Michael to this like burlesque show.
It's not a. It's a sex.
No. It's a burlesque show, and then it becomes weirder.
Okay.
Because it starts one way and then it gets weird. Because they're all sitting around and then they're all standing.
It doesn't matter, but it's not something that's legal.
No, it is something that I was glad that they didn't get too far into.
I know. I was like, do they show? But they don't. There's actually no nudity in the scene, which
and
is
I was just thinking, like,
thankful.
the last movie, they didn't have any of that either. So
yeah,
I don't think they would, and they didn't. But pretty much, it's weird.
But what happens?
Okay stuff.
That I wanted to say,
yeah,
is that Fredo is kind of caught up in the moment, and in a prior scene, he says he quote unquote meets Johnny,
who
who's
is
like
Roth's right hand man.
Yeah, and then he's. In this scene, Michael's listening to Fredo, and Fredo says, what does he say? I wrote it down. Old man Roth would never come here, but old Johnny knows these places like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
So he's just given up that he knows these people. And they knew from the get-go that an inside man had to have orchestrated this hit.
Yes.
So during this time, they attempt to kill Roth, who's getting taken to a Cuban hospital, and while that happens, there are like army soldiers that come in and kill the hitman. So Roth
was crazy.
It was insane. Roth lives. Some great intensity, great music in that scene too. Oh man. And then there's like a revolt also that's happening.
Yeah, that was one of the really interesting things to me in this whole sequence of the movie in Cuba. So there's all these these businessmen here ready to make investments. And a lot of them aren't even Cuban. Mm-hmm. So they don't even understand what's going on in this country. And you see that there is a rebellion happening. There's an uprising happening against the government because there's these rebels who believe the government is corrupt. Yeah. And it's interesting because Michael witnesses these people be arrested for being rebels. And one of them explodes himself while also exploding a police captain. So taking his own life for their cause. And that to Michael was just very interesting that someone would die for that. Because at one point he talks about that. He's like, I saw a thing today. And he says that thing. And he's like, it's just interesting that someone would just kill themselves for no money. They're going to win. Yeah. Because they're not motivated by that. And everyone else is like, ugh, whatever, Michael. Yeah. That was just so fascinating because I think.
How do you think that relates to the story?
Well, we need to continue talking about it so that I can remember what happens further.
Okay.
Because I think that does come back around.
I think it does too, but I didn't quite connect the dots, and I'm hoping we will. Yeah. While we're talking, so let's keep that in our brains. So then they're at the New Year's Eve party, and Michael grabs Fredo, and he kisses him very intensely.
The kiss of death.
The kiss of death, and he says, I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
Oh, gosh, that breaks my heart.
And so it's like, you're sitting there and you go, Fredo is dead.
And so everyone's fleeing this place. And Michael's like, Fredo, get in the car. We got a plane. We got to leave. And Fredo was like, no way am I getting in a car with you now. Yeah. So Fredo runs away. Michael goes back home.
And then we cut back to the teens of America. And we see Vito Corleone And Don Fanucci comes up to him and he says, hey, I know that you've been stealing some stuff and you've been making some money on the side. I want a piece of that action, so you better pay me. And
like pay him most of the money he made.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's like a third of the money that they made because it was $600. He wants $200. So
$200 from each person. He said $200 from each person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is all of the money then. So he's like, okay, I'll take care of this. And so he goes and he meets with his two friends, and he says, I want you each to give me $50, and I'm going to pay him $150. And they're like, no, we can't. We have to just pay. That's the move. And he basically says, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
He literally says that.
A little bit later, he does say that, yeah. And so then, and by the way, a technical note, all of the stuff that's shot back in the day has much softer lighting.
Yes, it does. It looks so good.
And so it just looks different. And it has, because of the soft lighting, it has kind of a nostalgic quality and look to it.
Yeah.
So it feels like a memory. And I think it also makes it feel like it's not like Vito really is doing the right stuff, whether it's morally corrupt or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I love all that. Then we have the sequence. Now, again, this goes back to what we said at the beginning. There's this religious ceremony that's happening where we have Jesus.
I'm trying to look up what it is.
Oh, perfect. We have Jesus on a cross, and then the Italians put money, like pin it to him. And the Don is walking around, and he pins money on it, and the crowd cheers. And Vito is on a rooftop, and the camera's just tracking with him as he goes on the rooftop, and he's just following Don. And as he's going, he knows that the Don is going to be alone at his apartment once he gets there. And he grabs a gun, and he sneaks up into the stairwell. He undoes a light bulb outside of his house.
Crazy.
Which, stuff like that just elevates what you're doing. It makes it feel like this is a real thing. Like, that's such a detail to include, that he unscrews a light bulb so that Vito will notice it, and it'll kind of slow him down and give him a chance to kill him. So then, the Don. So then the Don gets up there. Of course, this is after he's given him the money, and the Don says, you got a lot of balls for not paying me, but that's okay, I guess. And I could get you into this family. Like, I can get you a job here making money. So then the Don gets up there, he screws the light bulb back in, and Vito Corleone shoots him. Blood explodes off of his face. He falls over. He shoots him a couple times while fireworks are going off, and the towel that he has the gun wrapped around catches on fire. Yeah. Another just great deep, I mean, if you're going to have kills in your movies, make them memorable.
Yeah.
I can remember all of these kills because they're so memorable.
Yeah.
And they just feel like, oh yeah, that sounds like a story you may have heard about someone who got murdered.
Yeah.
You know? Did you find out what
the
festival's called? I don't know if this is it,
but I'm assuming that this is around New Year's Eve because it was in the present.
Yeah. So,
I don't know if it's tombola, which is an essential New Year's tradition for some Italians. But it says it's lottery style, and I don't know if it was lottery-like.
What does that even mean?
Well, which resembles bingo.
Oh.
So.
Huh?
So.
I'm so confused. So this is actually perfect, Jordan, because this is the intermission of the movie. So let's take a quick intermission. I'll put a musical interlude in here, and then we'll return with the second half of The Godfather, Part 2. So welcome back from the intermission. We got a big sneeze coming from Jordan, bless you. And I looked up Jordan looked up the holiday for a while.
I did such a rookie job of Googling.
And I just wrote,
an amateur.
I just wrote Holiday and Godfather 2, and it immediately came up as San Gennaro.
I didn't think to Google it with the name of the movie.
The Feast of San Gennaro. And let's see, that is a one-day religious commemoration first celebrated in September 1926 when immigrants from Naples congregated
Oh, I looked up that one too, but
along Mulberry Street in the Little Italy
Yeah.
section of Manhattan. To continue the tradition they had in Italy of Saint Genarius, the patron saint of Naples, his feast day in September 19th. In the liturgical calendar. Liturgical calendar. So that's that. But we're back from intermission. We're rejuvenated. We have some iced coffee. And we're ready to go and talk about the second part of this movie. Godfather Part 2. So, then we have... wait, is this the scene? Okay, no. So Michael sees Kay again. I wrote Michael talks to Kay, but it's not the scene.
Well, this is interesting. So he comes... Okay, wait, first. He comes home, but first he sees Tom, and this isn't at his actual home. Tom is catching him up on all things that have been happening, right?
Yes, yep.
So he comes back home and he doesn't see his family first.
Yeah.
He sees specifically Tom. So Tom is telling him all the things that have happened, and then he also tells him that Kay had a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And all Michael cares about is if it was a boy.
Yes.
Tom doesn't know.
And okay, so this is really crucial because there was something you said last night where you were saying that in this movie, Michael is not putting family first. And a lot of things are falling apart for him.
I think he thinks he is.
He thinks he is, but he's not. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting theme, because these are all about family. And like just the simple fact that he didn't go and see his family first.
Well, I think it is he thinks he's doing the right thing, but then later on he is having a crisis of that.
Yeah. And then we have the Senate hearings. And the Senate hearings are fun.
I just want to touch on one thing.
Okay.
When he does go home, he's walking around an empty house, and he sees Kay at the sewing machine, and he does not say hi. He just walks away.
Yeah.
After not seeing her he wasn't home for Christmas, wasn't home for New Year's for a while.
And, in the previous movie, he was gone for like a year. Well, maybe it wasn't a year, but months. And she waited for him. So she's like, am I just going to have to do this every couple of years?
Yeah.
Like, I just have to wait for him to hide for a while and then come back? Is this the life I have?
Yeah.
So then we have the Senate hearings where I think it's the Senate or like the Board of Nevada, or someone, I don't think they specify exactly, but they're having these hearings where they're trying to figure out, connections to the crime family.
I don't think it's just Nevada. I think it's like Washington, D.C. or something.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
Because they're asking him about the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, though. I do think that they didn't really talk about it. And then all of a sudden it's just happening.
Which I think is fine.
I guess, like, since there's an intermission and you're thinking, like, maybe there's been passage of time. I don't know. I think I would have liked a little preamble of maybe Tom said something to him about it and I just missed it.
He probably did.
Where he said, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of like one sentence comes up later kind of stuff in both of these movies.
Yeah.
Where it's like, the fact that I've only seen this 2 times means I'm already at a disadvantage to seeing Godfather 5 times, Because I'm still like, second time around, I'm not remembering where the basic plot goes, let alone the details. So I'm always a fan of a good Senate hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Those are great
That's
scenes in movies.
So chaotic.
Yeah. And so we're just getting introduced to that and people are being asked about it. That's basically it. Then we cut back to Vito. And he's starting, you see that he's becoming this guy, like he gets fruit from someone and they just give it to him and they say, no charge.
My pleasure.
And you're seeing the juxtaposition of like the other Don would have been like telling this guy, like, give me your money and I want some free food. And Vito is like, here's money. So he is ruling with love and respect.
Yeah.
They came to him with respect. You know what I'm saying?
By gabagool.
Take the gun, leave the cannoli. Other way around, though. So, and it's funny. So this episode is coming out, and you and I will be on a trip on the East Coast. We're going to a wedding, and we're kind of turning it into our anniversary trip. And we will. By the time this episode comes out,
we'll be in 2 Little Italies.
Yes. And by the time this episode comes out, we will have eaten probably at least 2 cannolis each.
Hopefully
At least
3, though.
Yeah. Goodbye, heart.
For anyone ever finding themselves in Boston, you must go to Little Italy. That's my favorite part of Boston. And a big reason for that is Mike's Pastry, where they serve the most delicious cannolis I've ever had.
So good.
Not that I've had a lot, but I don't need any more.
Well, and if you are from Boston, we would love to hear that you're a listener because Jordan has a lot of ties to Boston. So go to our Macaw Podcast Universe Facebook page, link in the notes, and connect with us there. And anyone who wants to, we just talk about movies. And it doesn't even have to be this podcast. And you can post too. So far, it's just been me posting and people posting on those posts.
I'm pretty bad at posting.
But yeah, you got to cover some of that too.
Sorry.
People like your opinion too.
Sorry. You're the extroverted one in this relationship.
You're like, I've talked about the movie. Now I do not need to speak about it again. So then there's this great scene where this woman comes up to Vito and she says, hey, I'm getting kicked out of my apartment because my son had this dog. And, there's this whole situation with the landlord. Vito goes to the landlord and he says, hey.
Just wants to have a conversation with him. He's a reasonable man. And he's saying, so you already have another family living there. And he's like, yeah, and they're paying $5 more.
They're going to move in. They're not in
But they're
yet.
going to pay $5 more. And Vito gives him 6 months advance, $5 per month for the woman to have her move back in. And he's like, come back and see me in another 6 months. And you know what? Start asking people around the neighborhood about me. So, they'll say that I'm such a reasonable, good person. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't take my offer. I'm giving you the extra money. This is crazy. So then the next scene is Vito is in a shop. So they're about to open a new store, like a general, it looks like a General Goods, but like imported Italian
it's
General
olive
Goods,
oil.
Specifically olive oil. And the landlord comes back and he is flustered and he gives him back his money. So you're like,
oh, I was in a bad frame of mind that
you
day.
know what?
Like, she's such a nice lady.
She's so nice, and she doesn't even have to pay what she was paying before. She could pay $5 less a month. Wait, no, $10, and I'm gasping at this. And so the woman can come back to live there with the dog and pay $10 less a month. And it's like, oh, he went around and talked to people about Vito, and Vito just doesn't even say a word.
Yeah, and the guy's having trouble like opening a door because he's so nervous.
Vito's friend is like kind of laughing.
Yeah. The
They're
guy
amused.
who we went to the play with earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is great.
Yeah.
I love this. And so that's that little portion. Now we're back to the present day. And Michael is at the hearing. And of course, at the hearing, he's like, no, I have no knowledge of this. No, I didn't do any of this. Al
Pacino in this scene, it's crazy. I mean, his performance in the whole movie, he just carries it. It's crazy. And he, especially in this scene, he is so that kind of person that is like, I'm answering your questions as truthfully as possible. I am complying. I have not exercised my Fifth Amendment rights. I have been so truthful with you. I have served this country. He's probably not, but I'm a taxpayer, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
Why are you, what is with all of this? And it's like, ooh, let's adjourn for the rest of the day.
It is like you were reading in the dictionary of film on our first episode. It is kind of a travesty that Pacino does not have an Oscar for either this or Godfather.
Yeah.
That's kind of insane.
Yeah.
But it's also hilarious, the scene where the senator stands up and he's like, I just need to know, I can't be a part of this hearing with Michael, but I love Italian Americans. I've had the best time with them.
They're among my best friends and they're so important to the American community. And it's like, geez, calm down. Like simmer.
I kind of read it as he's just trying to like compensate.
Oh,
and
he's overcompensating.
Really, really like show Michael like I'm here for you. But at the other time, he's leaving the hearing.
I know. It really feels like he's just implicating himself. Like if I was that dude who was running the hearing,
I'd be like,
I would be like,
to look into
make sure
this
he doesn't
guy.
leave the building.
So
subpoena that man.
Subpoena him?
Subpoena
I
that
thought you
man.
said apina. And then Frankie is going to witness against Michael. Remember, Frankie thinks Michael ordered the hit on him. So
Michael shows up with this man that we've never seen before. And I, to the point where I'm like, do we know who that is? You said no. So Frankie's on the stand and he sees this man and he keeps looking back at him. And it's like, what is going on? And so they say, do you know, or have you ever been in contact, or have you ever worked for and currently work for the Corleone family? And this guy's performance is stellar.
This is where he gets his Oscar nomination.
Definitely, because he's just kind of fidgeting, keeps looking back, and they're like, please pay attention. Yeah. And then he's like, well, I don't know nothing.
I never heard of no Godfather.
And everyone's like, oh.
Yeah. And yeah, he's, they're like, so you're saying that you've never, been ordered to do a hit or something?
And he has been sworn under oath with the FBI because he's currently in witness protection with the FBI and has told them everything.
Yeah.
And he is now on the stand saying he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
So he is like, it is crazy. Like whoever this person is that Michael brought is worse than the consequences he will now suffer from the government.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it throws the whole thing off the rails. That was their key witness, and they lost him. And you find out that man was his brother from Italy.
Yep.
And I couldn't really catch what more there was to that.
No, like what? There was nothing more than that.
I
think it's mostly implication.
Yeah.
It's kind of a threat that his brother's there. But at the same time, it's also a reminder, like, this, look, family, like, I'm sitting with your family and you're a part of our family. What are you doing?
I think so.
But I think it's also a pretty intense threat. Like, hey, I brought your brother who you haven't seen in 20 years.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that? Crazy. So, that's all great. There's this wonderful scene where Michael and Fredo are talking, and they've kind of, it seems like there's going to be forgiveness between the two of them.
When?
And Fredo is talking about how he was passed over.
This is after the scene he has with Kay.
Okay, on my notes, I have Fredo, I was passed over before that.
Oh, okay,
and I didn't take my notes out of order.
And I know these court scenes are not exactly chronological, I think, with what's going on necessarily, because from my memory, after the Frankie scene, they were back in the hotel, and Kay says, I'm leaving tonight with the kids.
Yeah.
So maybe there was another court hearing.
So there's a scene before the court hearing with Frankie, and it's not when they kind of come together as brothers, but Fredo talks about how he was passed over.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Because he was a middle child. Sonny died. He should have been the Don. And he says, everyone thinks I'm stupid, all this stuff. I mean, that should have been his
Oscar-winning scene.
Yeah.
Oscar-nominated scene. Yeah, that scene was just so crazy. The way that they blocked it and the position they had him in, like he's literally taking it lying down.
Yeah.
Because he's lying down in this chair, but he's having this huge emotional outburst. And the acting is so good because he's yelling at him, putting Michael in his place, but in the next split second, he looks like, should I be saying this?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? This is the scene where Michael says, I'm not going to kill you, like, mother's still around. Or he doesn't say that, but he says, like, I don't ever want to see you again.
Yeah, he says,
I'm never to
if
see
you ever
again.
want to see mom, you got to tell me in a day in advance so that I can be there.
Yeah, that's
and he tells one of his henchmen, for lack of a better word, make sure nothing happens to him while mom is alive.
Yeah.
And then I think even before that is when he goes to his mother, goes to Mama Corleone. And that's when Michael asks her, can you lose family? Did dad ever question losing family? Because she is like, no, family's forever and it's always. And he's having a hard time putting it into words because at this moment, Michael feels like everything he's done is for family, but he feels like he's losing it.
Yeah.
And then later, a little bit later, he does lose it.
Yes. So then after the hearing with Frankie, we get the Michael and Kay scene. And I think this is the best scene in the movie. And I think it's the most intense scene of the movie.
Easily.
So Kay and Michael are talking. She says, I'm going to take the kids. I'm out. I'm done. You said you were going to get out of this business. You haven't. And he's like, I'm going to make changes. Come on. Like, give me more time.
Saying these things that are just breaking your heart. Like, I'll change. Things won't be the same. Everything will go back to normal.
And Diane Keaton has this look of expression like, oh, you silly boy.
She says, you're so blind.
You're so blind. And then he says, I know that you hate me because of the miscarriage.
Yeah, and that's when she says, Michael, don't you see? It wasn't a miscarriage. It was never a miscarriage. It was an abortion. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So.
And then Al Pacino's face.
I can't believe it, man.
It drops.
Yeah.
And all expression is lost except hatred. He has hatred for her.
Yeah.
And she's kind of, she's like, can't you see, you idiot? Like, I would not bring another son into this world. So they would have to be a part of this.
She found out she was having a son, and that's why she aborted the baby. Because like you just said, she said, I will never bring another son into this family. Because she knows if she brings a son into this family, that will not be her son. And she will be contributing to this vicious cycle that she doesn't really understand what's going on. And that's why she doesn't want it. But she knows that it's bad. I think especially because of the court hearings. You know, she never really knew what was going on. But especially when that starts happening, she's like, oh, my husband's the biggest criminal in America.
Yeah.
Even though he's not being convicted and not being found guilty of it, he is.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he hits her in the face. And it's like, it's the most brutal, like, moment of the movie. And so then she leaves and he's like, you know, I have so much power over you. He says, don't you think I would never let you take the children? It's like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And later we'll see she is with the kids. And when he shows up, she has to leave. And as she's leaving, he switches spots with her because he comes home and she's leaving. And she's like, Michael, can you help or, you know, can we make this work or whatever?
And he closes the door on her.
Closes the door, and we hear her like, Michael, like screaming out and crying. Come on. That's good. By the way, I wanted to say that one of Mario Puzo's contributions, I mean, obviously he's one of the writers of the screenplay, but he was very adamant that Michael should not kill Fredo before their mother dies.
Oh, interesting.
I got the impression that Francis maybe wanted to have it earlier.
Yeah.
And Mario was like, the audience will not forgive Michael if he kills Fredo before the mother dies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's just fun to point out, and that's like a good instinct on his part.
So, yeah, it's just so crazy. So, Mama Corleone dies.
Well,
okay,
we're not there yet, because now we get to cut to good old-fashioned Vito. And he has gone back to Italy. And he is going to see and maybe work with this olive oil company on the island of, or not the island, but the city of Corleone. And it is the man who killed his mother and his father and his brother. And when he comes up to him, the guy's like, oh, your name's Vito Corleone. Okay, you named yourself after this town. And he says, yes. And then he goes, what was your father's name? And I can't remember his father's first name.
Anthony Andolini.
Oh, Antonio Andolini.
Oh,
I wrote
Antonio,
it down.
Yeah.
And he says his name was Antonio Andolini. Of course, the man is very old now. And the man's like, what is it? And he leans closer and he says, Antonio Andolini.
And this is for my family.
And he stabs him in the bottom of the gut, brings the blade up to his heart.
I don't get that.
And then the guy who escorted him starts firing at like the guards, and they get away. So he's had his revenge. Now he has the olive oil company. He is the Godfather.
Uh-huh. Oh, that was so crazy.
I know. And it was like you said, it's like, how did they do that?
Yeah.
And I think that is the end of the Vito stuff.
Well,
he gets off the train.
He comes, so he's on the train and he's with his children. Oh yeah, because he came with his children, with his family. And a little bit before, there was another flashback before that where he's sitting on the steps of his home with his family, and he takes Michael in his arms and he tells him, I will love you forever. And then, so in this flashback, the last flashback, they're on the train and he's holding Michael and he's just saying like, wave, Michael.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, they're very obviously like showing him with a baby Michael.
Yeah.
And his love and affection for his family. A really interesting thing to know is how, so they do such a good job with Kay showing her experience. I know that she's not in it very much, but like in the first in the first movie and the second movie of showing her as the outsider, and not only that, like the sexism that she will never know anything about it, but she is expected to just bear children.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting because anytime we see Mama Corleone, she's just supportive and great.
Yeah.
We don't get anything else about that. And I'm just curious what that role is really like, because she is Italian.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, I don't get the impression that she was part of the business at all. I don't think so. But it's like, was the understanding more clear? Was she more accepting of her role?
Well, part of it is the time period, I think.
Yeah.
You know, she's born in the early 1900s, if not the late 1800s.
Yep.
You know, women are not allowed to have much autonomy.
Yeah.
And so by the time Diane Keaton's around, Kay, there's a lot more women movements and stuff like that.
Well,
so,
women can vote simply because
women can vote.
In those flashbacks, Mama Corleone couldn't even vote.
Yeah. And I think, though, on another level, not setting sexism aside, because that is a definite part of it, but I think there is maybe an idea of like Mama Corleone saw Vito become what he became and respects him for that, whereas Kay lost respect for Michael when he became the Godfather.
Yeah, I think too, like, because they started with nothing together, Vito and Mama Corleone. I can't remember her name, and I don't remember if they said it even in this movie. They probably did, but they show like, so they came from rags to riches together, and I think it is like you're saying. I think a little bit of it is like, you're the man, you do take care of me and the children. Like, I have to stay home and take care of the children. Yeah, and like, so she learns that respect for him and that love, but he also brings her along with it the whole time. When we get to like Diane Keaton, she's just married into it. Yeah. Like, because Michael's already a part of it. There's no like her learning this as she goes along. It's just, now you're part of the family, but not really.
When she sees him go from a military hero to a criminal. Yep. So, I mean, yeah.
Interesting.
So now we're back in the present, and Michael won't let Fredo see him at his mother's funeral.
But Talia comes back.
Yes, Connie.
And
she says, basically, you were right, Michael, like, I'm ready to live with the family. I've been throwing away my life. Michael's like, okay, great. And in the second, really the second main scene, she's really in like 2 scenes in this movie. And I don't feel... She
probably has a little bit more screen time than that lady in The Network that won an Oscar for one scene.
I know. That's the record, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, what is it, like 2.5 minutes or something like that? But, oh, man, if you haven't seen Network...
Yeah.
You gotta see Network. Network.
See someone win an Oscar in 2.5 minutes.
Oh, I will look it up to make sure.
Yeah.
But that movie is like everything I love about movies in a movie. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it is.
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore. Go watch Network. Maybe we'll cover that on one of our anniversary episodes.
Okay.
Because we can't talk about it as a series. They didn't make Network Part 2. So Connie also tells Michael, you need to forgive your brother. Like, this can't work. And
it's crazy too, because I believe, at the beginning of the movie, she wants to go off with this man, and I'm assuming that she just does.
Yeah.
So then Mom dies, and she comes back, and she's like, Michael, let me take care of you and the children.
Yeah.
So Mom dies, and she's pretty much like, now I'm Mama Corleone.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then Michael and Fredo embrace. And I think, had I not been watching the behind the scenes of Godfather 2 and them talking about some of the story specifics, I don't know that I would have remembered him murdering Fredo, and I would have been like, that's kind of beautiful. He forgave his brother.
Yeah.
Because it is presented in this way where I think if you haven't seen it, you don't think he's going to kill his brother at this point. I don't know. What did you remember him killing his brother?
No, but I couldn't tell in this. So he hugs him, and it is very sweet, but he looks at the guy he told to kill him.
Yes,
and I can't tell if the look exchange was, we're all good now, don't worry about it, or remember what I said.
And that's the beauty of this movie.
I know. What's crazy is it's just so, looking at this, it's like, so Fredo, he's a coward and he gave up his brother, the head of the whole family. Like, you gotta die. Like that, like that's your punishment. And it reminds me of Sopranos when the character's name is Pussy, when he is working with the FBI and they find out that he's the informant, and they're like, all of them are crying because they have to kill him.
Oh my gosh, that scene in the boat.
It was so hard. So it's just, I just think they both did a good job of like, it's really hard to do this, but we have to do this.
Can we please watch some Sopranos tonight?
Okay.
So then Roth lands in Miami because no country will allow this man to stay there. Which, that's a great detail. And
he's like about to die.
He's about to die. He's an old man. And Tom Hagen's like, we don't need to worry about this. And Michael's like, no, I want him dead. We are going to kill him. And then Michael says a couple things to him. And Bobby Duvall and old Ali Pacino are just acting.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So he gives Tom the reins to basically run the family business while he's away this whole movie. And Tom has been nothing but faithful, which is what he even says to Michael.
Yeah.
But then Michael is like grilling him.
Yes.
So it's like the person who was perhaps the most faithful to this family, who can never fully be part of it.
You're still holding at arm's length.
Yes. Crazy.
Yeah. And then he says, I don't remember what Michael says to him, but then Tom says, "Why do you hurt me, Michael?" And he's crying.
Is he crying in that scene?
He's crying.
Wow.
I mean, crazy. It's just nuts. It's insane also that Robert Duvall is still alive. He's like 90 something.
He's 90. I looked it up.
Oh my gosh. He's so good. But then there's the 3 kills in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Someone kills Roth in the airport.
Yeah.
In Miami.
Yeah.
Frankie kills himself in the bathtub.
Okay, so why?
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Tom visits Frank at
the FBI
prison
place. Yeah.
And while he's there, they have this conversation about empires and how certain people, like, there needs to be a bloodletting sometimes.
Yeah, like a purge.
Yeah, and I'm trying to relate that because they have a conversation.
I just wonder if it... So, throughout this movie, Frankie is trying to get help from Michael, and Michael doesn't give it to him, and Frankie almost dies for it. And Frankie thinks that it's all because of Michael, therefore he's going to betray the Corleone family. And then Michael brings his brother, which changes Frankie's mind about it all. And he can't go against the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if he is like, and this is kind of goes back to that cult mentality of like, I've sinned.
Yeah.
And I have to be punished. And I have to atone for my sins. Well, and instead of letting someone else do it, he does it himself.
Yeah, it probably is. I think we might have been overthinking it when we were watching it because I think it is that simple. And it's also like he is still a loose end, even though he showed his face in court and was like, okay, he's a loose end to them, and he still is like the government's connection to taking down Michael, and they're not gonna like let up magically.
No.
So yeah, that makes sense. And then of course Fredo is killed on the boat as he's doing a Hail Mary. And I like how, because like we've talked about, the murders in these films are so visceral and so imagery based. There's something really poetic and beautiful about how when Fredo is killed, we don't see it. We hear the gunshot, it cuts away. And I think that's that disconnect between Michael and how he's having to like compartmentalize that he's killing his family.
I think so.
It's good. So then there is finally the flashback scene, the very last scene of the movie where
birthday.
Sonny's there, everyone's there. It's the surprise birthday, and this is when they find out that Michael has signed up to be in the army.
When Vito has specifically and made him go to college, and I think it was to become a lawyer.
It was.
So basically, when Michael was born, like his life was mapped out, as were the other kids, I'm assuming. I actually feel like Connie's only life purpose was to get married and have children.
Yes.
But for the boys, like Tom it was made to be the conciliary. Sonny was made to be the next Don.
Mhm.
Michael was supposed to be another lawyer to help. Well, the thing too, Michael was the one that Vito did not want to have any part in this family business.
Yeah.
As if like you were the one pure one, and I'm going to allow you to go.
I think I figured out the Cuba thing
Okay.
because of what you're saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I already forgot about that.
When the Cuban guy is a rebel, and he blows up, and he's not motivated by money, so he's going against the cause. And I think, in light of what you're saying, I think one reading of it could be that Michael is the rebel because he rebelled against what his family wanted, and then did become part of the money.
Yeah. Right. So
does that make sense? What I
kind
just
of.
said?
Let me talk about it.
Yeah.
So he has his whole life mapped out, and he's going to be taken care of. And then Sonny,
it doesn't involve the business.
Yeah, and meanwhile, and Sonny's talking about, so like World War II was about to happen, or it is on the cusp of happening, and Sonny is making really derogatory jokes about Japanese.
Yes.
And they're talking about the war and how it's happening, and he makes some joke about like, well, at least no one's joined this movement. And that's when Michael says, I have.
Yeah, just like the rebel. He's fighting for a cause.
Yeah. And I think, is it Sonny just kind of saying like, well, what's interesting is he's talking about how, like, I'm assuming he read this in the paper about Japanese people just blowing themselves up for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, for a country? No one loves their country that much or would do anything for their country. And Michael said, I did. I enrolled in the army.
To which they're all upset.
Yeah, which is interesting to think about in Japanese culture, especially in World War II. You learn about, like, the kamikaze pilots.
Yeah.
And some other things I can't remember, but like the whole like sacrificing for country thing.
Yeah.
Where you commit suicide for your country and that is considered honorable.
Yeah.
That is like for a mafia family where it's really just the interest only is anything that affects the family. Like that is foreign. Like that does not make sense. Especially when the father of the family, Vito, had to flee his country because it basically rejected him.
Yeah.
And he came to this country that also was rejecting him. And he has fought to make a name for himself in it. To the point where I'm going to make my own country. And it's going to be this family. And that's all that's going to matter. When Michael is thinking bigger than the family.
Yeah.
And is going to prison. Or
just like
the
Cuban rebel.
Yes.
So I think the Cuban rebel could be read as a metaphor for his life.
So do you think that he lost touch with that though?
Well, I think you could read it that he lost touch with it, and that side of him has always been there. Or the simple fact that his dad had his whole life mapped out in front of him, and he rejected his dad's plan by becoming the Godfather.
Yeah.
And because that's like rebelling against his family's plan, even though he makes it about family.
Yeah.
So he's still the Cuban rebel in a way.
I don't know if I understand that. How he ends up to still.
Well, I think you can read it like you said, but I'm also reading it like the Cuban is rebelling against the system, and if you take the system and call it Vito's plan for Michael, he rebels against his dad's plan by becoming part of the family and the family business because his dad never wanted him to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
Well, the interesting part, though, is in this movie, he's trying to do things for the family, and I don't know if he quite accomplishes it all.
No, I don't think he does. So that's Godfather Part 2.
Yeah.
Guys.
It's a thinker.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. What I think this movie does that sets it really apart from Godfather 1 is there is a lot more subtle nuance going on.
Yeah.
The first movie is nuanced and subtle as well. But I think, there is a lot of stuff that we could probably sit here and talk about. I mean, we have. But I mean, you, like anyone listening to this, could sit there and talk about the Cuban rebel for a half hour and try and figure out what you think about it and stuff like that. Whereas the first movie does have some of that, but I don't know that it has it quite to this extent.
Yeah.
Which makes sense why people say this movie's as good, if not better, than Godfather Part 1.
Yeah.
I love it. It's perfect. 10 out of 10, just as the first movie is a 10 out of 10. Yeah, I don't know that I like it more than the first movie, but I don't like it a single part less.
Yeah. I like the first one more.
Yeah.
But this one's still really good. And a classic.
Yeah. And then, so, yeah. I mean, do we have anything else on Godfather Part 2?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, here is the deal, folks. You already heard on Patreon, we got Kill Bill Volume 1 that came out 2 days ago. So next week, we're covering Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, because today that movie came out. So that is Phase 4 Marvel, movie number 2. And I got high hopes for that one. I got real high hopes because it looks pretty cool. And there is a water dragon, and that's kind of all you need for me to be happy. And then the week after that, we'll be back in Godfather Part 3. And then, of course, after that, we'll be doing another series. I'm not going to say what, but let's just say our next 2 series might get a little bit scary.
Ooh.
Because we're getting close to that scariest time of the year. And also, we got a pretty great Halloween episodes planned where we cover movies that were supposed to be franchises but only have one entry. See Fantastic Four 2015, our first year, and see Mortal Engines from last year. But this year is going to be a fun one. So thank you for listening. Rate, review, and subscribe. I haven't shouted that out in a long time.
Go eat a big plate of gabagool.
Let us know what you think the Cuban Rebel means, either on our Facebook group, on our Twitter, or on a rating of this very podcast on Apples.
Mm-hmm.
Apple Podcasts. I said apples on Apple.
Okay.
Okay. We'll see you next week for Shang-Chi.
Bye.